welcome Lorraine Woodwark. She is Director of Attorneys United for a Secure America. And Lorraine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here.
So you've been an attorney in our region for a long time. You've also, I think, been a judge as well. Tell us a little bit about your career and what this new position entails.
I've been an attorney for about 19 years, and as for judge, it was a pro tem. So
that's close enough for me.
Oh, my goodness. But now with this new position, I've been in here just a very short while. I'm now the Director of Attorneys United for a Secure America, and we do have a website. I'm going to plug that right now.
Sure.
AUSAmerica.org. It's a great organization. We are a project of the Immigration Reform Law Institute. They're located in Washington, D.C., which means I just travel all over the country. So I'm here today to talk about the new change, the enforcement of the public charge laws that were announced last week.
All right. So first of all, why don't we talk about the history of this concept of what a public charge means, because people haven't seen that term in a long, long time.
All right. Well, the public charge law was devised back in 1645 before we even became a country. The Massachusetts public charge law wasn't a general condemnation of poverty. It was that the citizens held a moral obligation not to become a burden upon their neighbors. And why should the poor and middle-income Americans have to pay for foreigners who can't or won't take care of themselves? So in 1882, the first actual public charge law was directly applicable to migrants. This passed, again, like I said, in 1882. Millions of hardworking blue-collar Americans did not see public charge laws as anti-immigrant. It was a desire to succeed through hard work on their own terms, was what attracted them to the United States in the first place, not the promise of a handout.
And, and I remember this from history, that to come to America, you had to have a quote-unquote sponsor. And if you fail, let's say you couldn't get a job or you got hurt, that sponsor had to take care of you. That was part of their relationship.
That's absolutely correct. And when I immigrated in the 1980s, I also had to follow those regulations. I also had to prove that I was going to be self-sufficient and that I was not going to become a burden upon the American taxpayers.
So you said you immigrated?
I did.
From where?
I originally immigrated from Canada in the 1980s, and I came here legally.
So tell us what the rule was again for you. How did that work?
Well, the rule has still been in effect. It was never repealed. It was never put on the back burner. It just, over the last few decades, it wasn't enforced. What the requirements are, you come here as a legal immigrant, you are required to not apply for or receive public assistance in any form. That included welfare or food stamps, or which are now called SNAP, or any other kind of public assistance or public housing, what have you. And that was enforced. And then I guess over the last few decades, changes have happened, and I guess a lot of immigrant groups started demanding rights, and the government officials and our politicians gave way to them and basically didn't enforce the law like they should have been.
So here's my understanding, and it's not crystal clear on this subject. But as you know, my day job is serving as a government watchdog. And my understanding is technically they say an illegal immigrant can't qualify for welfare, housing, food stamps, whatever, but their children can, especially if their child is born here, which is the phenomena of the anchor baby. So they say we're not giving aid to the parents, we're giving it to the kid, but, they say money is fungible. And to what degree does this public charge thing, do you have any idea how that relates to I'm going to call it the anchor baby kid phenomena?
Or what they call as birthright citizenship. You're right. The birthright citizenship came about with our 13th Amendment, with allowing slaves who had been brought here to be working as slaves on the plantation. And those individuals who had been born here or their children were given citizenship. And that was the intent of the law. And then it wasn't until 1964 with President Johnson that he started permitting and bringing in people from all over the world and just giving citizenship to anyone that could drop a baby on our shores. So that's part of the problem.
So, but this new, it's not new.
No,
it's going back to the original public charge law. Do you know how that affects, for instance, they don't send the welfare check to a 6-month-old baby
No, they
or
don't.
a 14-year-old kid who was born here when his parents were not. They don't send the check to them. So do you know how this is going to work out in that situation?
Well, a lot of the purpose of having an anchor baby or dropping a baby off on our shores, what happens is that by extension the parents would get citizenship. Now, if the parents were receiving public benefits, and really, as a lot of it, it's been like a shuffling of the cards and just basically hiding the ball from the public. What happens is the public, non-citizens, and that includes people who lawfully come to the United States along with illegal aliens, they're provided housing and benefits that a lot of our hardworking poor Americans can't qualify. But what happens is a lot of them have been rewarded with citizenship, even though they've been using social services and public welfare, and they've been a real burden on the taxpayers. Our taxpayers are paying even more taxes in California. This is part of the problem. And so by extension, they have been rewarded with citizenship. And now the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security are going to be looking to see who's been using our public assistance and basically denying them citizenship. And that's rightfully so.
Well, and it is rightfully so because, again, people are the American ideal was, give us your tired and your poor, and they'll have an opportunity to earn a living here. Don't give us your tired and poor so they can be tired and poor here.
and be sponges on our society. Right.
And and the bottom line here is that this issue of having a work ethic, of becoming financially independent, of being able to contribute to society is not anti-American.
No, it's not.
And we are a nation of immigrants, but those immigrants, again, throughout history, until we created the great welfare state, knew that if they came here, they were going to have to work. They're going to have to become productive members of society. They were expected to assimilate. And they were given the opportunity, which still was unprecedented anywhere else in the world, to become upwardly mobile, at least in one generation.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, this is what's going on, and we're seeing that it's a burden on taxpayers, especially our poor and middle-income earners. They're having to pay taxes, and I mean, look at just in the news lately, they're talking about our tent cities. Well, I've actually interviewed people in their tents, and I said, well, why aren't you living in public housing? And they go, well, we've been displaced. And I said, well, how does that happen? They go, our rents get raised. And these are American citizens, by the way. And when they go to the social services or they go to the public housing authority, they're given a tent. And they said, here, go find somewhere to go live. This is your new housing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we saw the other example with Gavin Newsom basically saying, we're going to restore the mandate for insurance here in California. If you're a citizen here, you got to buy insurance. But if you're a legal alien, we're going to give it to you for free.
Right. There's another public benefit that isn't equally available to American citizens. And I just don't see why Americans should have to pay for non-citizens. When we pay taxes, we assume this is going to go for our roads, or our police, our firefighters, for all the necessities of American life, not for foreigners, people who have come here who are intentionally become a burden. And I can talk about what the Border Patrol has been telling us.
We'll do that after the break. Lorraine, give us the website again.
It is ausamerica.org.
All right, Lorraine Woodwark, Director of Attorneys United for a Secure America. You're listening to The Andy Caldwell Show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The Andy Caldwell Show is sponsored in part by CoLab, the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business.
Let your elected officials know you are listening to the Andy Caldwell Show.
I'd like to welcome you back to the show. My guest, Lorraine Woodwark. She is Director of Attorneys United for a Secure America. And we've been talking about this rule that it's not a new rule. It's actually enforcing the law that's been on the books for decades, that immigrants coming here cannot become a public charge. That's the old-fashioned way of saying a welfare case. That's how we used to say it. And so, again, this is the existing law. Obama and I think Clinton fudged the law. I don't know if it was a phone and a pen or what they is, but they haven't been enforcing the law that was on the books. And so this is not a change, but going back to the original.
That's right, Andy. A lot of people have been begging for laws to be enforced, and among the laws to be enforced are immigration laws. And this is a very valid one, and it's very beneficial for Americans. As I was saying before the break, we have a lot of Americans in tents, and a lot of them have been displaced because in their place are put illegal aliens, and non-citizens are getting the housing and the apartments that Americans once rented. And they're basically now Americans are living on the streets. You can look and see that.
You know, it's particularly hard on our veterans.
That's right.
A lot of them that are suffering from PTSD and other problems. But, you know, the other thing that's interesting, and this is on the internet, Cesar Chavez was in an interview, was opposed to illegal immigration because he didn't want the competition for jobs.
Exactly right.
You know, so let's get to another aspect of this. California, one of the ways that California has sought to provide assistance and giveaways is by California giving away federal dollars.
Exactly.
So the welfare payments that they make people eligible here really paid for by people not just in California, but Ohio and Missouri and Arkansas and Florida and Texas, because they're giving away federal dollars. Well, so Trump's going to cut that federal supply off. So now Gavin Newsom and company can't appear to be the heroes handing out these checks. They're not taking it very well, are they?
No, and I get the impression we're going to have more taxes in California. But what I'd actually like to add is more another slap in the face of Americans is both the city and county of San Francisco and the county of Santa Clara last week filed lawsuits against the Department of Homeland Security, complaining that, here to quote directly out of their case, this abrupt shift in policy undermines the county's critical public health and safety net systems. So it flouts federal law. Basically, this is outright untrue. It's a distortion of the law, and our American taxpayers, our California taxpayers, are having to pay for these frivolous lawsuits brought on by the city and county of San Francisco and Santa Clara and wherever else in California they may be filing suit, which is really an outrage. Americans need their hard-earned dollars, and they don't need their local governments to waste their tax dollars.
Well, and this gets down to something. California has 10% of the United States population. They've got well over 30% of the nation's welfare cases.
That's right.
And again, they didn't care because the money was coming from the Fed. So Jerry Brown, tells the president of Mexico, hey, we got an open door. Gavin Newsom says anybody getting kicked out of some other states welcome to come to California, because again they were being generous. This is a form of socialism. They're being generous as long as they have somebody else's money to spend.
Right. I mean, this is an outrage. Americans are suffering, especially Californians. And I haven't really met any Californians who are in favor of providing welfare to non-citizens. I think a lot of our traditional values, American values, are that Americans want people that come to this country to be self-sufficient and to contribute to society, not to become a sponge and not to rely and depend on their neighbors to pay for them when they are able and willing or can work and they're just not willing.
And to just round out my position on this, most of my friends growing up, some of my closest friends, in fact, were children of first immigrants, and
Right.
their parents all work. Some of them work 2 jobs. Some of them, and they were hardworking, great people. And so I've never been this knee-jerk, close the border kind of thing, because, and then plus when I was the industrial relations manager at Union Sugar, even then I realized there's some people that don't want to do backbreaking work. They don't want to do stoop labor. But historically, immigrants and if you go back far enough, kids, teenagers, when I was a kid and growing up in Lompoc, the summer job kids got was hoeing beans, or when I was really young in Kingsburg, California, our friends picked grapes during the summer, and that's how they got new school clothes, or else they got hand-me-downs.
That's right.
And so, these jobs have never been done. Nobody grows up and says, I want to be a farm laborer. Nobody grows up and says, I want to be working, changing linens in a hotel or be a bus boy.
Right.
But I had people with PhDs applying for jobs, seasonal jobs at Union Sugar, because of language barriers. There's language barriers, educational barriers, and all the rest that people are willing to start out doing these jobs, and that's part of the history of America.
Right. Well, from 1942 to 1962, there was the Bracero program, which
Yes.
was very effective. Corporations went down to Mexico. They hired people willing to work. They were checked out for contagious diseases. They were immunized. They were brought up, provided housing, and it worked out really well because they were protected. They were provided work. They could send their money home, no problem, and everything was above board. And then that was eliminated, I believe, in 1964 with President Johnson. And then ever since then, we've had just massive flows of illegal immigration into this country. And it's not even really immigration because they're not coming here legally.
Well, and what we do have, they've got this H-2A program that a lot of the farmers in the region are using right now.
Right.
And this is what I've always argued. The workers are not the burden. It's the family and the extended family that becomes the burden. Because like our growers, like our vegetable growers, are year-round with benefits. Strawberries are almost year-round, and then some of them get benefits as well. But now this H-2A program, they take care of medical, transportation, housing, and food. So they're not a burden to society.
Right.
And the bottom line here is there's ways to work around the major impact where if you just had the workers, you're not building new schools.
Right.
You're not and if the employer provides health care, they're not flooding an emergency room because they know the emergency room will treat a cold and won't be able to turn them away.
Right.
So some of the exploitation of the system that's driving up the costs goes away, but we can still get the workers.
Right. And this is due to corruption of our politicians,
Yes.
our government officials, some of our judges. We're being inundated by fools in office, I guess I should say, or tyrants in training. Maybe that's a better term for it. We have people who have been put in charge, the valuable resources that taxpayers provide, and they're just wasting them on people who are not citizens who really have no business being here if they can't provide for themselves.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the first thing you should do, I know this is a new position for you.
Right.
I think the first thing I start off with is I'm a legal immigrant.
Right.
I think that because that puts you into a context, because they always want to say, first of all, they want to say it's about Hispanics or it's about Asians or it's about other people. No, we've had immigrants. My family immigrated at one time from Scotland, and my mom was born in Austria. So I'm a son of an immigrant. My brother, if he would have been in a different generation, would have been called a dreamer. So we all have our stories to tell, but we've got to dispel the myth that this is based on racism or anti-immigration sentiment, because I love the fact that our nation was a nation of Native Americans, colonists, and legal immigrants.
That's right. Well, America has a lot to provide as long as you come here with the ambition of providing for yourself and finding opportunities for yourself, and you can really make it. You don't have to live in the station in life in which you're born in. You can do a lot of great things. And that's what Attorneys United for a Secure America is about. We are recruiting attorneys across the nation. We need volunteer attorneys. We need assistance with filing some lawsuits to push back against the corrupt politicians and our government officials. So please consider joining.
Give the website one more time and then come back when you're ready.
AUSAmerica.org.
All right, Lorraine Woodwark, congratulations on the new position, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Andy.